First of all, those of you who are here this morning, you saw some great company presentations. Yeah. And of course, we love this venue. It's, one of the best venues we've been in for just the production quality, and so we're filming everything, and so everybody who presented will be able to, give you your presentation to be able to use as you wish, and we'll also be getting out there to help you get in front of other investors. So, how many people here were at last year's Coin Agenda in Santa Monica? Okay, so that was the last Coin Agenda in the continental United States. We then did a Coin Agenda in Dubai, which was excellent, and then our final one was in Puerto Rico in December, sort of closing out that 10-year series. And I'm sorry? Well, we know you were there. You live in Puerto Rico. So, actually, a few Puerto Ricans in the house today, which is cool. But basically, we had the legendary dinner, which was sort of a thing for all the Coin Agendas. Now we have a tokenized dinner, but the legendary dinner that we had for the Coin Agenda Global in Santa Monica was at Vadim House, which is the very cool facility that Eric Pulier, who we'll be speaking with now, owns. And very cool venue, and we did a fireside chat on AI and NFTs, and pretty much technology focused, and then had a great killer party. And today, though, we're back with Eric, but I'm going to be not talking about technology so much as sort of the entrepreneurial journey. This is the Bit Angels Day, so we're going to be talking about what it takes to be an entrepreneur over and over and over again, and what you learn and what keeps you coming back again. And you'll certainly weave in some of your current things, but Eric, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most talented and prolific serial entrepreneurs of our generation, particularly in Web 2 and Web 3, and I guess all the way back to Web 1. And has been a friend for 20 years, and he always just keeps on, forging paths into new areas, and they always seem to be the right paths. So, Eric, welcome to the first Tokenize.
Thanks, Michael. So happy to be here on this amazing moment to launch your new series. I think anyone who knows you is excited about what this could mean for the industry, and is following you into the next steps into the future.
Well, thank you. I'm sort of heartened to see that the first dozen or so pitches today, I think about 8 of them were talking about tokenizing. So
beautiful.
I think the pivot from coin to tokenize was a good timing industry-wide, because that seems to be what the next wave is about. When I first started Bit Angels with David Johnston in 2013, about a year later, he came up with something when we ended up starting the dApps Fund, which was one of the very earliest crypto funds. It was March of 2014. We raised 10,000 Bitcoin, which was $6 million at the time. Had we held on to it, it would have been... But we ended up deploying it into other digital assets, including $1 million into Ethereum. So that was a very, very good investment. And so right around the time that David actually coined the term dApps, he also had something called Johnston's Law, that's now T-shirts, which was anything that can be decentralized will be decentralized. And he and I have always had sort of a back and forth about what's the most important part of this technology. Is it the decentralization part or the tokenization part? And I basically came up with Terpin's corollary to Johnston's Law, which is anything that can be tokenized will be tokenized. And I think actually more things will be tokenized than decentralized. I think it was said earlier today that there's almost, I think it was Josh that said almost no asset is going to not be capable of being tokenized. Right now, the regulators, of course, say that certain things, they can be tokenized, but they can't be sold yet. And there's all sorts of things that still have to be worked through in terms of old technology and new ideas. But let's go back to Web 1.0 and talk about the early days of the read-only web and what your first foundational companies were in that era.
So back in Web 1, or pre-Web 1, I was actually doing, believe it or not, early virtual reality on what was called a 3-pipe Onyx. It's about a $400,000 machine that we were working on. It had all the computing power of probably a 5-year-old iPhone now, and the US government wouldn't let you export anything related to it. That's how exponential a curve we've been on compute. I was working on that, the CD-ROMs,
Probably around the same time I was working with SGI.
Yeah, SGI made the 3-pipe Onyx. That was their system. And so I was doing really pretty silly things when I look back on it. How do you market a certain movie with what they call EPKs and directing music videos and things, silly in the sense of global impact, but interesting to me at the time. And one day my brother called me up and said, "You got to see what this kid is doing at the University of Illinois. They've overlaid, at the time we were working with hypertext. In some ways, we overlaid a hypertext layer on the internet that's super easy to use." And I was like, well, I'll take a look. And in like 10 seconds, I was completely transformed. It was like, oh, we're not doing this anymore. We're doing this. And I don't think my parents will ever forgive me because my brother was in a postdoc looking at neuroscience and physics and interesting things. Meanwhile, I was doing the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers screensaver. And I was like, "Greg, you got to come out and help me with this. There's something here with this overlay." And that ultimately became Mosaic, which became Netscape.
The kid was Mark Andreessen.
Yeah, it was indeed. And his professor was Ping Fu, whom some of you may know. He's a luminary in our space.
And the grant to develop that all came from Larry Smars, who basically also got the grant to do Apache. So it was a magical moment in time. That's where I downloaded my first browser too.
So that really was a magical moment in time. I think it's a good way to say that. You can almost see time freeze. And we can also look at certain steps along the way where we can say, oh, it did it again, right? And we're in one of those moments now. I'm not pleased on which side of the fence I came on this. As fascinated as it was with Netscape, I had this relationship with Paul Allen, who was, and some like Scott McNeely and the people that were doing Sun Microsystems. And we got to present to Bill Gates, whose goal very quickly was to, before the monopoly stuff and before they had to be careful with their language, was to literally choke the oxygen supply out of Netscape. They recognized like this could be big. Rather than let's rise all boats, let's kill it.
The famous memo of we have to become an internet company or we're dead.
Yeah.
1995.
Yeah, so I went up there, slept under the desks for a while, presented to Bill Gates and Jeff Rakes at the time, and a long story short, that kind of, we didn't want to take money from Microsoft, but we took money from Paul Allen, became our first investor, kicked off the first incubator in Southern California called Digital Evolution, and started churning out really interesting companies, one of which I took public, US Interactive, in 1999, and others of which found their way in the firmament. My journey went from going around evangelizing to everyone that you should have a website. And people were saying, well, why would I want a website? First we did a little bit, you should have TCP/IP, no one knew what that meant. But you should have a website. And, well, why would I want a website? I have a brochure, I have a TV commercial, I have a radio commercial, I have all this money being spent on things that work. Why would I want something that downloads at the speed of a snail and has video at like 2 frames per second at a postage stamp size? What possible reason would you want that? Something clicked at some point and people stopped asking, why would I want a website? And they just said, how do I get a better one? And a better one, and a better one. And then it became much easier to follow the macro trends on the back of that.
Interactive was really one of the early leaders in that space.
Yeah, it really was.
Back in the day when you could get $1 million to build a corporate website.
Yes, and a online grocery shopping system, and a new online bank, and all the things that were really hard to do because nothing talked to anything else, and it was very brittle. But we plundered on, and we built, I think a lot of things that are still in use today. The next step for me was open source. Again, Microsoft on the other side of history, saying, why would anyone want unsupported free software? It doesn't make any sense. People want Windows, not Linux. And again, eventually they would change their tune. And I built one of the first open source companies. One of the earliest ones that did well was called MySQL that Oracle eventually took up. Ours was taken up by IBM.
As I recall, there was a couple of kids in Finland that you partnered with, and then I think the sale was like, what, a couple $100 million, or was it?
Yes, it was, but that was really about what I came to believe was a marketing technique, because ultimately the way open source works is you still want to get paid, you still do want support, you want all the things you want from closed source, but it seeps into the underbelly of everyone using it very nicely through Google. Everyone's like, how do I solve this problem? Oh, it's open source. You start using it, and then they're like, uh-oh, I've hit the end of my usefulness without this. I need it supported, I need extra features. So that became a really powerful model. The next big thing, and I wrote a book on this, was service-oriented architecture, which is again coming back now.
SOAP.
SOA. So I got SOA.com, and I put out the concept of Lego pieces as the right way to think about software. So rather than build monolithic stacks, and every time you need the weather, build a weather capability, somebody can just build the weather capability, put in a zip code, get the weather. Somebody else can do a picnic app and not deal with the weather problem, right? So ultimately, the idea of APIs and service chunks was really quite novel at the time. Being able to throttle them, to manage them, to secure them, to pay for them, and the whole governance around that. So I built a company called SOA Software, became Akana, ultimately sold to private equity. On the back of that, I was recognizing that the next major mega trend, by the way, these are incremental trends, not as big as internet to web. The one we're in now is bigger than internet to web, but the next one was everything as a service. If you can start to now create these services and their network accessible, then you should build as little as you can, and Salesforce started coming in with a major message, no more software, buy as a service. We had the smaller pieces.
That was Mark Andreessen again. I mean, people don't realize how many important things Andreessen did. I mean, not only was he, the person who basically kind of created the browser with that team as a college student, and then went and started Netscape, and of course then what he created, Mosaic at the university, then became Internet Explorer because Microsoft ended up buying it.
Yes.
And then when they ended up having the Mozilla Foundation, that was also a variation of the same.
Yes,
Mozilla
Mozilla was vital to all of this,
yeah.
and unfortunately, I worked on what became ActiveX, which was embedded into IE1 to try to take on Netscape, and it did help. Microsoft plus their monopoly power was able to push in to become the browser. But then, like Mosaic started to become copied, and then Chromium and everything from Google became the base. So after that, I built something called Desktone, which was everything as a service, including your computer. So eventually sold that to VMware. That's now the virtual desktop system globally that VMware distributes. Long story short, I was building a lot of these things. I coined a term called hybrid cloud, because everything was moving to the cloud, but I was an enterprise guy, recognized not everything could.
Well, what I was going to say about Mark Andreessen was his second company after Netscape, which became a billion-dollar company, was when he famously proclaimed, they got laughed at when he said, client server is dead, everything's going to be the cloud for Loud Cloud. And that became a multi-billion-dollar company and got sold to Hewlett-Packard, and after it went public. And he was right, and the people who thought client server was going to be it and the cloud was nothing were wrong.
Trends are unmistakable. You don't have to be that smart. You can just basically go out to lunch with CIOs and people trying to solve problems and listen, and you'll see commonality, and then you'll see the next big thing. But the next big thing after we'd built hybrid cloud and governance for that.
So at this point, I'm just going to pause.
Yeah.
At this point, how many companies and how many exits over what period of years?
So, not including the ones from high school, at that point it was probably about 13 companies. all of which found an exit in one way or another, some more successful than others, some quite successful, like an IPO or a major acquisition, some merged, and then found their way within larger conglomerates to
So
find
none
a
of them
return.
went lifestyle business or shut down. You found an exit for all of them, even if it was an acqui-hire, it was still an exit.
Yeah, other than like whiteboard, experiments and things like that. Anything we really went for, we found
And
our
13
way.
exits in how many years?
So, well, now I'm on.
No, up to that point.
Okay, up to that point was 1995 to 2000, maybe 14.
Okay.
So I don't know what
So
that was.
that's 13 exits in 20 years.
Yeah.
I mean, so most I was gonna say, I mean, most yeah, that's pretty remarkable, right? I mean,
Math genius.
most people say like, okay, you're gonna start something, expect it to take 7 to 10 years, and you're averaging about like not even 2 years. Now, some of them were in parallel, or were they all really?
Some were in parallel, to be fair, and some took quite a
I like to
quite a
call
while.
it I'm guilty of this myself, the parallel serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, very much so. And I'm not a good CEO past 50, 60 people. I mean, at one point, I sold to one where I was the head of 70,000 people, and I'm not good at 50 people, so I don't know what to say.
I can
about
go to
that.
about 100, but when it gets to the point of your day is basically having departmental meetings, I'm sort of like, let me find somebody who really enjoys this.
It's rough. So now in 2015, I started what now I guess you'd call it the 16th company, which was the recognition after working quite a while for years then in blockchain, in recognizing.
So let's start with let's take that demarcation, because you just said that as big as the move from internet to web was, and you had the oh my god moment. I had the same one for me the oh my god moment with downloading the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana software from Andreessen's dorm room effectively was when I went and clicked Louvre.fr. And I'm in the Louvre, right? I mean, I thought it was a really interesting advancement in the late 80s, early 90s when you went from sneakernet to Ethernet, right? And local area network to wide area network. And so all of a sudden you're going from, I go back to when it was like, single floppy drive to hard drive, right? So all of a sudden your path goes from like C drive, D drive to like drive down the hall to drive across the campus. Now you're drive anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah.
And so when you do Louvre.fr and all of a sudden you're in like, really bad quality 1990s graphics, but you're looking at the Mona Lisa live, that to me was really where it was like, this is going to change the world.
Yeah.
And so I had that same experience then, almost exactly what would have been how many years later, when I guess 20 years later, right? So you're talking the early, internet was 93 when I got my first browser from Andreessen, and then 2013 was when I read the Bitcoin white paper. And so I think that was as fundamental of a shift in the world financial ecosystem and technology as the Windows-based browser.
I agree. I mean, when I read the Bitcoin white paper, I for the first time understood what Brock was going on about. Like, calm down. Calm down. What do you you don't know tech.
It's like read the 9 pages and then tell me you don't know what it is.
Yeah, it's just like, this solves a very fundamentally important problem. What I was wrong about, and I did not understand, was just how intransigent, just how difficult it would be to get enterprise adoption for something that seemed very evident to me. And that's where, by the time I got to the end of 2014, I was actually feeling quite frustrated about whether it had viability in any of the areas that I thought it might, because of the regulatory environments, the speed of which, and of course the disintermediation of the very people that you need to comply. So I was sitting at my bar at Harvell's and I said, let's just wipe away all the complexity. Very wise man named Andy Brown, who he's been CTO of UBS, Credit Suisse, Bank of America, list goes on and on and on. He's one of the smartest guys in tech I know, and one thing he always says is, don't take something complex and try to fix it and make it usable. Start with the absolute most simple thing and add complexity only where necessary. So I was thinking about that and what he said about that, sitting at the bar having a beer, and I said, well, what's the simplest, actually conceptual thing you can do with the first principle, the notion of ownership? Because that's what this really does, right? It creates a independent arbiter of ownership and provenance. And so I was thinking, well, wouldn't it be good if I could just own this beer and make this, forget about credit derivative swaps and changing title across various instruments and changing the way everything's tokenized. Just, what if I could just tokenize a beer? And you can distinguish one from the other. I could put it on the counter. You could see it. At the time, AR was just coming into the fore. And the bartender could pick it up and give me a real beer. At that point, I've created an instrument of commerce. It's moved with ownership shift. Someone else has it, and then if it was network aware, the Lakers get over 100 points, it could explode into confetti and give you a taco. So now you can start to think of it as a ticket, as an engagement instrument, as a way to gather data, as a communication mechanism, and that's what I started putting forward, the papers and the decks and the presentations related to. I think we can create a non-fungible version of Bitcoin. Now, it took a little while for Ethereum to come around and a lot of great minds to start to create standards and smart contracts that would enable that. But we started to build that really from that first day. And geniuses like Craig Sellers.
This is Block V then.
Yeah. Well, it was two years before Block V. This was Vatom, because everyone thought that that NFT, and I thought too, non-fungible token was way too geeky. Chicks won't dig it. Nobody will understand it. Some chicks excluded. So I was just like, this is not going to work. So what is it really? What is it when you dissolve the boundaries between bits and atoms? What is it when you can create something that is digital, that has all the qualities of something physical? It's a virtual atom. And hence the name Vatom was born. I still think it's an apt way to talk about it, easier to me than a NFT. But that now started to grow. But right from the start, I put forward in the earliest papers, I was revisiting that now, that this is an incredibly effective, probably the most powerful human communication tool in the history of mankind, but not really an interesting instrument of speculation. Not interesting to me. Even though you could say, as soon as somebody can protect something and have ownership and have it move on networks, everyone who has a 5-year-old kid's going to scribble something on a piece of paper and sell it and try to get rich quick. That's fine. Those are spikes. That's the art world. The people can decide what's art, what isn't, what they want to buy. But what's really interesting is its engagement and utility potential. And that's what I set out to build. And to this day, that's still what I believe, even though there are spikes of interesting projects where people make a lot of money buying and selling that stuff. It's never been my interest. My interest still to this day is to start with the notion of self-sovereign identity. You can't own something unless you are someone, have that become interoperable across all things, physical and digital, and then you can start owning digital things.
So this is almost, almost 10 years for Vatom since inception?
Yeah, in terms of that R&D.
Tell us about the potato chips and where you see Vatom going now.
So some of the largest brands in the world have now used this technology. We licensed it to something called Block V because we wanted to have an open standard, to have other companies use it as well. And that's developed into between the various companies that are leveraging the software. We've got massive numbers of wallets out there, but the most important thing is we've got the largest brands in the world actually adopting it and using it to gather first-party data, to legally and ethically know who their customers are, to engage them in a way that has never before been possible, to engage that part of the brain that says, take one, own this, as opposed to give me uncertain value for time. And so that shift has really kind of taken root. But we've also noticed that throughout all of this, that engagement modality has gotten increasingly powerful, but the liquidity, if you want to play the game of speculating and playing like what's up and down today, that's on the fungible token side. And that's what's grown to be unbelievably huge. And from my view, things like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu and all these type of tokens, those are not sideshows. Those are not like cross your arms and tisk tisk. That's a unfortunate byproduct of this stuff. The thing's a game. When you have a finite number of things and you can trade at mass volume across many, many different marketplaces, that's the game. The whole thing's a game. Like GameStop was a game. You might not like it. I think there is a type of investor, Warren Buffett being like the leading one, that says, okay, what's the value of the underlying asset? Do I like it? Where's it going to go over time? That's a segment, and it's an important one. But just about everybody else is just speculating on what everybody else is going to do. And the way that that works, what makes a token successful or healthy, other than the market making and some of the shenanigans behind the scenes, is the behavior of the community.
Well, you could certainly compare the behavior of the rise and fall and hopeful rise again of Bored Apes and CryptoPunks to the rise and fall and rise again of Dogecoin, Shiba Inu, dog with hat.
Exactly. And so if you have people who love the idea of dog with hats, then that's a community that come together around a shared joke, right? And that's really what any relationship is. That's what a marriage is, right? They say a shared joke against the, humanity, right? It's a shared sense of humor. It's a mischievous look in your eye among your insiders, like, we're going to do this, right? And a belief system. Now, that belief system has a number of characteristics that are not that hard to break down what they are. They're not 97. It's like, do they buy? Do they tell their friends to buy? If they buy, do they buy more? If they have it, do they dump it or do they stake it? Do they trade it among themselves versus dumping it? Those behaviors, which are very similar, could be gamified if every fungible token at scale also had a non-fungible equivalent. But the problem is blockchains don't work that way. If I have...
nice segue, by the way. Now tell us about the new company.
Yes. So think about this. If I've got billions and billions or trillions of Terpin token, I like that, TT. If I've got billions of TTs, and I want to send you, and they're ERC20s, right? They're not indistinguishable from one another. You have to think about this as if I could make them all differentiated, why would I make an ERC20? I would just make billions of NFTs. Problem is, that's not how blockchains work. If I were to send you 1 million, the gas fees would be unmanageable. The gas block sizes would take me 5 days to send them. It just doesn't make any sense. If you break them up into, I'm going to have a token and an NFT, the mentalities are incongruous. They're awkward. So you have ApeCoin and you have Bored Apes. And the people who have Bored Apes, they're like, I got a Bored Ape. I wonder what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to make a musical. I'm going to make a Dairy Queen with a new ice cream named after my ape. Fine, that's a mentality. It's very different than, oh, I've got 10,000 of these. It went up today, went down today. I'm going to stake it. I'm going to do derivatives. I'm going to do whatever, right? That's a stock mentality. So they don't merge. If you could merge it, what you'd want is something like light. Now, the most annoying phenomenon on the planet is light. Those of you who have ever seen light, well, you're looking at it now. You know how annoying it is if you look at it in very small quantities, because a very small piece of light acts like a wave if you don't look at it. And if you look at it, it turns into a particle. That's what we want, is a token that has those quantum qualities where with zero change, you don't want to change its compatibility with the existing world. An ERC20 is an ERC20, an ERC721 is the same for NFT, has to maintain it. But if I don't look at it, I want it to act like light. I want it to act like a wave. And I can move 1 million from me to you. But if I look at any individual one, I want it to be distinct, at scale, and start to take on different qualities where all the aspects of engagement and gamification and utility now merge into where the liquidity is.
So to me, that's the equivalent in the old world of, when I was a kid, I was a coin collector, and so I'd go to the bank and I'd get a roll of quarters or a roll of pennies and then count them out to see if there was a 1909 SVDB.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And they're all worth at least a penny, but there might be something non-fungible inside there that is worth more. Is that kind of what
That's
you're doing?
Exactly right. So, Elon Musk says you can buy Tesla with Dogecoin. That's great. So imagine I have a lot of Dogecoin. It goes up. I'm feeling wealthy. I'm going to the Tesla dealership, and I'm going to buy that. I'm going to buy that Tesla, $60,000, whatever it is, of Doge. On my way, I see a billboard. The billboard says, "Have you seen your Doge today?" I'll be thinking, what does that mean? Have I seen my Doge? It's a quantity. It's light. You can't see Doge. There's a symbol, there's a mascot, but it doesn't have a meaning for fungible tokens. Well, what if you could? And what if it said also the red one, the one with a red star on it, is $1 million if you just throw it to this smart contract or redeem it? Say, well, why would I give Elon 60,000 when I might be holding one that's worth $1 million? Or some combination of collecting them and then trading to get something that's worth even more. Oh, why would I throw them out at all if I can stake them? And as the longer I stake, the bigger they get and brighter.
Would these have to be done on initial issuance?
No, this is the key. You have a number of ways to look at this problem. You can inscribe things with individual value, like
ordinals.
Like an ordinal. Problem with that, it's too expensive. You tell me how much it's going to cost you to make 10 billion ordinals. I don't want to pay that fee. And it's for new projects. You don't take an existing project and say, let's ordinalize it. And it doesn't work that way. You can bundle. You can, there's something called ERC 404, was meant for fractional ownership, but it's completely non-starter for this because you bundle, and not only is it problematic for cost reasons, but the most problem with it is you can't see anything until you flip it. You want to flip each one individually, and it's a new token type. So you have to airdrop it on people. You can't just wake up in the morning at a new project and say, oh, I wonder what this looks like, right? So those key qualities are necessary. So the solution that we believe is the right way to go about this is not inscribing, it's not bundling, but it's entanglement, back to the light analogy. So to entangle something is to take it in its existing form untouched, and to take what you're entangling in its existing form untouched and entangle them together. So if I want to look at my Doge suddenly, I can look at what they would be if I flip them from one state to another at any given time.
So the project is called?
The Entanglement Chain, or N-Chain for short. It's the smart contract we call 741, because it's a combination of ERC 721 and ERC 20, even though it's not just for EVM compatible, so we dropped the ERC, but 741 is a good way to refer to the smart contract and the underlying chain as N-Chain. And Atom, again, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I'm looking at that and saying, well, this is a great way to distribute these and create interesting things, because you could take any one of them and throw it out Pokemon Go style. Thousands of digital butterflies can float around and you can grab them and then redeem them at retail. So the gamification constructs, we've proven out. We know how that works. But now let's look at the actual dynamics of the market.
And is this a project that's spinning off of Atom, or is it a standalone project?
It's an open standard. It's something that Atom will, let's call it, support. And it might be one of the best ways, I hope it is, to make them and to see them and to play with them. But it should work with any wallet. In fact, I'll show you a quick example. Okay. If you flip the tab, let's see if it's still open here. So what you'll see here is it says up in the upper side that I've got 925 total non-fungible fungible tokens. These are 741 tokens. They have unchanged their ERC 20s and their ERC 721 equivalents. And what's happening, and this has never happened in human history, we've assigned an AI to make interesting, creative, individual pictures at unbelievable scale. I mean, in human history, owning something individualized that you can actually search through and understand, if you go to the beach and get a wheelbarrow full of sand, you'll have many, many grains of sand. It'll be very hard to distinguish them, very hard to search for them and to find the one you want. But in this case, as he scrolls through, you can say it's actually coming up with incredible creativity. We've told it, imagine a world in the future, this is just one series of the billions that will be there, that all biological life is wiped out. It actually plays kind of badly into what people are worried about with AI. But so imagine that that's happened, and in our refuse, in our discarded electronic garbage, in the trash heaps of history, new animals are evolving. New life forms are evolving from our discard. And at this mass scale, it's not only coming up with them each, it's coming up with what their names are, what their various qualities are. So now you can imagine different types of staking, different types of gamification at an unimaginable scale. Now what's interesting is if you went into Coin or MetaMask or whatever and say, well, how many ERC20s do I have? Well, it'll tell you you have 919 because 6 of them have been flipped to NFT state. So these are quantum tokens. If I flip one to a fungible token, then I'll have one less non-fungible token. If I flip it back, and then the reverse. Now, flipping back and forth and maintaining ownership across, and if I sent you maintaining ownership and you sent to someone else and you staked and you did this across the entire ecosystem of blockchain, that has to be kept track.
So it's similar to, again, if I got that roll of quarters and I found a rare one, I no longer have the initial fungible ones to buy hamburger with it.
Exactly, unless you want to. Yes. You can, it can only exist in one state at a time, like light, but you can decide which state you want it to be in. And so if you keep scrolling these just a bit, you'll see that the creativity is phenomenal. Then another one, if I pull down on the side here, actually I don't know if you can do it. You see that little thing? That. There's like 3 different series. Go to Crypticals. So another one is we told it, tell us some jokes and draw some pictures. It's telling jokes at an unbelievable scale. We'll see if they come up. Now, I don't know what this joke is, but if you keep scrolling down, some jokes are ridiculous. Like, why did it think this is funny? And some are like, oh my God, genius. You're a great comedian, AI. Well, how did you do this? Keep scrolling down. I don't know if this is a good or bad joke. Let's have a see. Okay, in the past, present, and future at a party. Oh, I met the past, present, and future at a party. It was tense. That's a pretty good joke. Like, if you told me that joke, I would say you're not crazy. That's like an okay joke. Now imagine these are coming out at the scale of billions. Keep going. Here's another joke. Let's see what it says. Pirate's favorite letter. You think it's R, but a pirate's first love be the C. It's a pretty good joke. Anyway, you can go to existing projects and you can entangle them, and suddenly they're gamified. So now if you're wondering, why is your token in the shitter? It's because your community is not doing the behaviors that you'd like them to do. Well, how do you get them to do it? Gamification science is how you get them to do it, and incentives and motivations aligned with the outcomes that you want. Now you can do this at unimaginable scale.
And so what's the status of this? And we're running a little bit late now, so we're going to wrap up after this. But what's the status of this project? Where is it on the roadmap?
So today, we're going to roll it out to first insider group. If you're an insider, if you want to be, then you're in the group. A couple hundred people. You
heard it here first.
We'll send you some of these. You can play with them. You can brainstorm. You can think, what is the implications if all of crypto was suddenly gamified? It's already a game. Why don't we recognize it and play it right? Give us feedback. Decide how it's going to work. Decide what this can be. Become part of that community. That's today. Now, what you're going to see in the coming months, far faster than I thought was possible, some of the most recognizable names in the business, the largest projects, the largest things, both in the normal brand world, the non-crypto world, and in the projects when you go to coin market cap and say, I wish I was part of that one. Well, you can be, because now they'll go to the next level for the next generation of crypto.
Fantastic.
What's the protocol called?
The smart contract is called 741, and the protocol is called N-Chain, which stands for Entanglement Chain.
Entanglement.
Oh, sorry. Entanglement Chain. I'm a very entitled guy, so I like to just sort of put this.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you. EN Chain, Entanglement Chain.
And other than
and I feel entitled to that word.
And other than pulling you aside as you're walking out of here, how does someone get involved in the project? Is there a website to go to or a code?
We're going to launch a website, and we'd love to hear from you and get feedback.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. All right, great as always.
Thank you so much. I know I'm excited. I have about 25 million different ideas of things that I could do that technology just solves, right? It's like the leapfrog effect. Up next, we have a panel. I believe it's time to show me the money. Sheldon, where is our money panel? Money.